Hi again and welcome to DeepDive Talent Insights and Analytics channel. This is I Think I Love My Job. If you're just stopping by or today's your first time and you do not know who I am Kalifa Oliver, the resident expert in all things employee experience here at DeepDive. What are we going to talk about today? Recognition. Let's go. Recognition and the feedback related to recognition is probably one of the easiest things that a lot of organizations can do, but for some reason they don't like to do it. I will tell you that it is easier to remember criticism and it is easier to be critical. It is actually a bit against our nature just to be naturally just complimentary and celebrate wins. It is a form of feedback. A lot of times in jobs you find people just don't have the feedback. They don't know if they're doing well. There's nothing wrong with telling somebody they did a good job as easily as you would tell somebody that they really sucked. And you shouldn't say sucked. But it doesn't take that much out of you. It is not a natural thing to do, but it can become a part of your repertoire, a part of who you are, a part of your leadership and management style if you take the time to do it. You don't always need formal rewards and recognition programs in order to recognize somebody for a job that's been done. And it is always best and good to recognize somebody soon after any sort of achievement. I will say though that you have to be very discerning when you are choosing to recognize folks, because one of the things you don't ever want to do is have a recognition program or just recognize people for doing the bare minimum, right? A lot of times when you do that, what you're doing is taking away from people who went the extra mile or would go the extra mile. So if you have two people on your team and one is just pushing through and going the extra mile and doing a whole lot more, and you have the other one who's, meeting their goals, they are working, nothing's wrong with that. You don't want to just put them in the same bucket, because what tends to happen is instead of the competitiveness where you push the other one to match the efforts of the one who's going the extra mile, the one who's going the extra mile pulls back. That is just natural and that's human nature. You want to make sure that your recognition is meaningful. Meaningful recognition is not hard. You can send a card. You can call out somebody in front of their peers, but be very, 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 very careful when doing that for two reasons. There are cultural differences in how people like to be recognized, and so some people do not like to be called out in front of others. It makes them feel ashamed, it embarrasses them. So get to know your people as well and tailor recognition that way. Also across the board, find a way to do certain things that doesn't make it look like you're showing favoritism from one person to the other. So case in point, let's talk about, you may have somebody who culturally it's not something to be the center of attention. So they like to work, they work hard, they do really well, and you want to recognize them, but you recognize that they don't really like to be that center of attention. And you have another person who is also doing really well and they love they love to be called out. What you want to be careful not to do is to do one over the other. While you are doing something good in recognizing that one doesn't necessarily like to be recognized and the other really likes to be recognized, you need to find a happy middle. It may just be calling the names out but not going deeply into it and then sending an email later with more information to the group. It is sometimes harder than you would like to tailor recognition, but you really should try to give that feedback. One of the other reasons why you have to be really, really conscious about recognizing folks who are doing the work and pushing through and really going through it for you is you don't always understand what it takes to get there, right? And a lot of that time somebody can push through in your first quarter to achieve these ridiculous objectives or these ridiculous goals that may have been set. And by the time their annual survey comes, you've forgotten because they pushed through in Q1. You're remembering those who did it more recently. And there are several examples, countless examples in organizations where somebody's like, well, I did really well in the first half of the year. This person did really well in the second half. And this person's been up for awards and not me. And that's because, again, that's recency. You have a tendency to remember things that just come to mind at that period. So typically what you want to do is make it part of what you do and make notes of recognition so that when it comes to doing annual reviews, you're not banking on the person to do a self-review to remember every single thing that they did. You're a manager, you're a leader, that's your role. As much as you can, take advantage of enterprise recognition programs, be it awards, be it certification, anything that your enterprise does that can help you as a leader recognize people, do it. That's your team. You're as good as your team is, or you wouldn't have a team, right? So you want to make sure and use every tool in your tool belt and everything available to you to make sure that your employees are having a good experience and they feel good and they know that they're not being unseen and they're not invisible and they feel valued. It is amazing how valued somebody who has a manager who will say, you know what, that was really good. Even as just a quick comment, it's amazing the difference they often feel than a manager who says nothing at all. You want to really be that manager who empowers and enriches and values and treats the employees who you're responsible for like they matter. With recognition systems, especially formal recognition systems, there are some issues that you really need to look out for, especially if any of the recognition contains money, monetary rewards, or the like. So a lot of jobs where there are bonuses that are given out for meeting goals, you want to be really, really careful that you are recognizing people for the right things. So if you've noticed a pattern where somebody is just killing it, you also want to make sure that if it's a big anomaly that you're looking at it, because if you keep recognizing this one person for doing the same thing over and over and over and you're unaware as to why they're doing it or how they're able to accomplish it but nobody else is able to, you run the risk of encouraging the wrong behavior. So instead of actually recognizing and rewarding the behavior that you are trying to recognize, which would be the accomplishment of these goals, the meet and exceeding of these goals, you're actually rewarding the bad behavior that it takes to get there. So you have to really have a balance in how you do it and realize the difference when something seems wrong or something seems off. You have a team of 5 and this one person is hitting it out of the ballpark, but not just hitting it out of the ballpark, it's out of the country and it doesn't seem normal how they're getting there. And the others who are doing really well, they're not doing bad at all, but they just can't make those numbers. They can't meet those goals. It's often on you before you do large recognitions and decide that this is just the best person hands down to really take a look, because you might have 4 people who are working their behinds off within the system and they are doing all the right things, and what you're rewarding is the behavior of that last person who's taking some shortcuts to get where they're getting. Recognition programs, like I've said before, need to be meaningful. You can't just send everybody blanket a card just because, right? Because at that point, it doesn't have any meaning when it doesn't have true value when that recognition comes. So you want to be really, really aware and really conscious of how you recognize, what you recognize, and you really want to make recognition a part of who you are as a leader. It needs to be in your leader DNA. So I really just wanted to touch on recognition. Recognition is a really big part of the employee experience. Employees who feel appreciated also tend to feel valued. When you put in work and you are going through changes with your organization, recognized employees are often willing to step up. Use as many tools in your tool belt to recognize, and the simplest and easiest is just a kind word, a kind email. Recognize what's happening, recognize the changes, recognize the people who are still there, recognize recognize that it is hard sometimes to work through changes and transformation. It is hard sometimes to meet an objective with resources that are lacking. And those words and recognition of that and telling people thank you, which is also a form of recognition, is sometimes enough to sustain an employee and help them with a very positive employee experience. So sometimes it's the little things. So like me saying, thank you for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today on recognition. As usual, if you have any ideas or thoughts, please leave it in the comments. I am happy to read and discuss. And of course, if you like what you see and hear, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you again. But before I leave, I want to leave you with this. There's always room to have a brilliant experience. Bye.